What's up, you guys? Welcome to a 30-minute study session with the Lab Girl. It is your girl, the Lab Girl, and I am here with a 30-minute study session on fixation. Welcome to part three of your studies. Welcome to part three of fixation. And let's see here. I'm just getting my book, you guys. Um, Thank you for joining me for part three. And parts one and two, of course, it's already up um, on the channel so you guys can get a refresher on parts one and two. Today will most definitely be the last of fixation before we head on to the next chapter in your Frida Carson book. So go ahead and grab your book, your coffee, your drink, whatever you need to do, your notes, so we can go ahead and finish up fixation, and let's finish strong so we can go ahead and I'll get you ready to take the ASCP. And today we will be covering the remainder of the fixatives, Zinkers, Healy, or Zamboni, and any non-aqueous fixatives. There may be some words, disclaimer, that I probably will pronounce wrong because I haven't said the word in forever. So just forgive me up front. But yeah, I hope you guys got um I hope you guys actually studied the pop quiz questions from part two of fixation and answered those questions. And today we'll also have a pop quiz. And before we get into the 30-minute study session, do not forget to, whenever you come into the chat or to the live, go ahead and give your girl a big thumbs up to, let YouTube know that you guys are actually enjoying the study sessions with me. So just say hi as you enter into the chat. Leave a comment. As these questions are, as we do the pop questions, you guys can feel free to put your answers in the chat. If you have some questions about any one of the last two videos that I've done, you can most definitely go ahead and leave those comments in the chat. And, if I see them before, I end the live, I can definitely answer those questions for you. I think I pretty much did all the housekeeping part. So let's go ahead and get into part three of fixation. All right, so part three of fixation. So let's go ahead and talk about Zinker and Healy, Zinker formal solutions. If you guys don't know, I have the third edition Frida Carson textbook, and whatever edition you guys have, I hope it's easy for you guys to follow along with me. But of course, it will be in the fixation chapter. The books may differ. We understand that, but if it's anything you guys would like for me to further explain, feel free to let me know in the comments or any other way that you would like to contact me, which is by email or on my social media platforms. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Zinker and Healy. And this is really important because between the Zinker and Healy stock solution, and what makes it working and what separates the two. So what I like to do is for Zinker and Healy, I like to keep those two together like as a pair. That's how I was able to remember Zinker and Healy as a pair. So just from the textbook, it says these are considered together because the stock solution is the same and the solutions differ only in addition of acetic acid to one and formaldehyde to the other. So this one should be pretty simple for you guys to remember. So let's go ahead and look at the Zinker and Healy stock solution. Okay, so if we look at the stock solution, we got mercuric chloride, potassium dichromate, sodium sulfate, and distilled water. So for the Zinker working solution, it's going to be the Zinker Healy stock, which is everything that you see here. Once again, it's not really important for you to know like the measurements, but just the key things is the mercuric chloride, the potassium dichromate, and it says optional sodium sulfate, but the main two is the mercuric chloride, potassium dichromate. So the Zinker, that's the stock solution together. To make it working Zinker is going to be the Zinker and Healy stock solution, which is everything that's listed within the stock. And then we add acidic or glacial acidic acid. And that is what makes it Zinker working solution. Okay, and for the Healy working solution, it's going to be the Zinker Healy stock solution, and then it's going to be formaldehyde. So for Zinker, you could put glacial acetic acid, and for Healy, formaldehyde is what make it working Healy solution. Key notes: because formaldehyde is a reducing agent, this is not a stable solution. The formaldehyde must be added immediately before use, or the solution will darken and become turbid on standing, indicating that it is not stable or that it's not usable. The tissue must be treated for mercury pigment after immersion of either of these fixatives. If excess fixative is not removed by washing with water, reduction of potassium dichromate by the dehydrating alcohol may cause the formation of chrome pigment. Formalin pigment may also be obtained with the Healy solution. Of course, the formalin pigment is because the Healy working solution has a formaldehyde. And then, of course, the mercury pigment is because the stock itself has mercuric chloride. Zinker solution will lyse erythrocytes, red blood cells, because of its acidic acid content. And if you guys remember what acidic acid does, and what, if you guys want to go back, so picric acid shrinks and acidic acid swells. So Zinker solution will lyse erythrocytes because of its acidic acid content. Healy solution will preserve the erythrocytes, but the presence of acidic acid makes Zinker solution the better nuclear fixative. Zinker solution also has been used to fix and decalcify needle biopsy specimens of bone marrow, but it can dissolve iron. Mallory considered Zinker solution the best of all fixatives, but because of the mercury present in both of the fixatives, a less hazardous fixative should be substituted. Okay, this is something key to remember. Most staining is satisfactory after fixation in these solutions. The Zinker solution recommended if the Mallory phosphotunzic acid hemotoxin stain is to be applied. Okay, so the acronym for that is PTAH. That is a special stains. So that's a special stain, and it's for, if you got the same edition book as me, it's page 208. So let's go ahead and turn to page 208. I'm just going to do a quick reference because we haven't even touched special stains, but this is in the nerve chapter. And I'm just showing you guys because whenever we talk about these different fixatives, I know we're so used to using formalin, but when it comes to special stains, these same fixatives like Zinker and Bowen, these things will show up within your chapters within these special stains. So for the Mallory phosphotunzic acid hemotoxin, or PTAH, that's the acronym we use in school. PTAH, because that's a long word. The exception is silver staining. Many of the silver techniques are unsatisfactory after fixation in either Healy or Zinker solutions. So if you go to the nerve chapter, and the PTAH method So glial fibers, Mallory phosphatunzic acid hematoxin PTAH stain. Purpose, demonstration of glial fibers. The principle, the fixative is buffered, neutral buffer formalin. The quality control is the control that's best used for this stain. But if we look at the first reagent, this is just an example of how your special stains is going to go. You look at the first reagent. The first reagent is PTAH solution. That's hematoxylin, phosphatunzic acid, and distilled water. So PTAH is used in the purpose of glial fibers, potassium permanganate, and oxalic acid. And then you have the procedure. But we'll get to that later. But whenever I'm showing you guys within your fixatives, this is good for this is good for that, you can actually refer that to your special stain. So if you know something is good for, let's just say, preserving, erythrocytes or lysing RBCs, or something is good for carbohydrates, you can definitely flip over to your special stains chapter and try to find that stain, so you can know to put that on your flashcard or on your, on your index card as well for studying. But the PTAH solution is the first thing. That's one of the reagents that's used in the glial fibers for demonstration of glial fibers in the nerve chapter. All right, so let's go back to your fixation. Tissue specimens may not remain in these solutions indefinitely, and the fixation time must be controlled. In general, the maximum time in either of these solutions should not exceed 24 hours, or the tissue becomes overhardened and nuclear basophilia is decreased. After fixation, tissue must be washed very well in running water, and any remaining tissue should be stored in 70 to 80% alcohol. And there's some, in the later paragraphs, they're talking about the hazardous um, the hazardous things that, Zinker and Healy, because they're very hazardous. Actually, it says solutions should be discontinued. However, for historical reasons and because they're still used in some laboratories, Zinker and Healy solutions are included in this text. So it may be rare that we use this, but they still want you to know exactly what Zinker and Healy solutions, why they are used, and what they're used for. And they are very carcinogenic. The target organs are the kidneys, central nervous system, and liver. So it can be fatal if they're inhaled, ingested, or absorbed through the skin. And they should definitely be used under a fume hood. So it's really important that, you guys take precaution when using these type of chemicals, and you have proper PPE. All right. And I'm actually going to pop up a quiz, um, pop quiz time for parts 1 and 2. You guys can answer this in the comment section down below if you like. But your pop quiz today is: the recommended minimum time for fixation informally is 1 to 3 hours, 6 to 8 hours, or 9 to 10 hours. So if you know the answer today, you can jot that down in the comment section down below. And that is your pop quiz for parts 1 and 2 of fixation. All right, so let's continue to orth. So as far as Zinker and Healy, make sure you think of them as a pair. You can think of them as husband and wife, mother and daughter, wife and wife, husband and husband. I don't care. Just think of them as a pair, okay? And just know what separates the two. And it's pretty simple. One is formaldehyde is used, and one mercuric, glacial acidic acid is used. So those are the difference. All right, so let's go ahead and go to orth solution. All right, so for orth, we got potassium dichromate, sodium sulfate, distilled water, formaldehyde. The content of both potassium dichromate and formaldehyde in this solution means that the safety regulations appropriate to each must be followed. Let's see. Potassium dichromate. Did we already talk about potassium dichromate? Let's go back here. All right, we sure did. Okay, so let's go back to potassium dichromate. That's back with your chromatic pigments. And potassium dichromate is rarely used alone for fixation. Remember, it's a non-coagulant unless used in the acid solution. Then it will act like chromic acid, which is a coagulant. So if you read that potassium dichromate chapter or portion, that's exactly what's in orth. So we know that it's possibly some type of pigment. So I'm pretty sure you need to actually wash after fixation because it has potassium dichromate, sodium sulfate, distilled water, and formaldehyde. And then it's a fixative used for pheochromocytoma. So definitely put that in your notes. Orth solution is a fixative used for pheochromocytoma. So let me go ahead and type that. Let me type that for you guys. Because I'm pretty sure once we get to special things, that's actually going to come up. So we're going to do orth solution. Okay, so orth fixative for pheochromocytoma. So definitely make that a flashcard for you guys. And it has potassium dichromate because you need to know what's inside of orth. It has potassium dichromate and it has formaldehyde. So if it has those two, I'm pretty sure some type of pigment can occur. So that definitely needs to be washed. And let's see here. Zamboni solution, buffered picric acid formaldehyde or PAF. So this has paraformaldehyde and saturated aqueous picric acid. So there goes your paraformaldehyde. We go to the aldehyde groups. That goes back to your aldehyde groups. You got formaldehyde, you got your glutaraldehyde, and then you got your gloxyl, and you got your paraformaldehyde. So let me just go back to all right, so it says this right here just tells you how to actually do the Zamboni. And so it's paraformaldehyde and the saturated aqueous picric acid, double filtered. And it says Zamboni solution should have a final pH of 7.3, adjust if necessary. This fixative is very stable, and although not widely used, it is a good general purpose fixative. The fixation time is not critical as it is with Bowen solution. Zamboni solution allows secondary fixation with osmium, and because it's easy to use and preserves the morphologic characteristics accurately, it is preferred by some institutions as a primary fixative for EM. Because of its formaldehyde content, all regulations appropriate to formaldehyde apply to this solution. All right, so Zamboni, paraformaldehyde, saturated picric acid. Not really that much to really remember, but just know what's inside of it. Let's go to zinc formalin solutions. You want to read everything about zinc formalin. And what is in the aqueous zinc formalin is zinc sulfate, formaldehyde, and distilled water. The zinc also participates inside the tissue specimens using microtomy difficulties. Unbuffered zinc formalin is zinc sulfate, distilled water, formaldehyde. Okay, so major key on this one is formalin pigment. Acid hemantin can be produced by this fixative. If zinc formalin is to be followed by a neutral fixative, such as phosphate buffered formalin, the tissue must be washed between reagents to prevent a precipitate from forming on the tissue. A minimum of 4 to 6 hours should be allowed for fixation of biopsy tissues and 6 to 8 hours for most other tissues. All right, so there's Zinker and Healy, which is a combo. We got Orth, fixative for pheochromocytoma. We got Zamboni, and we got zinc formalin and unbuffered aqueous zinc formalin. The thing about zinc formalin, it says zinc formalin solutions may replace neutral buffered formalin as a universal fixative. However, the use of zinc formalin solutions have increased. Cross-linking is prevented by zinc formalin, and many macromolecules are retained in near native conformation. Okay, we got alcoholic zinc chloride formalin. So in this category here on your note cards, on your flashcards, you could probably just make it, or name it zinc formalin solutions, like just like the book has it. So you'll know aqueous zinc formalin, and then you'll have unbuffered aqueous zinc formalin. The difference, if you see the difference between those two, aqueous means with the water, but then the unbuffered one is unbuffered aqueous. It still has the water, the still water, zinc sulfate, but it looks like they added formaldehyde to that one. So it looks like that's the difference. And in that category also is alcoholic zinc chloride formalin. You got zinc chloride, distilled or deionized water, and alcohol, 99% alcohol, and formaldehyde. So it looks like this solution was recommended as a post-fixative solution following fixation with neutral buffer formalin. If I was being honest, I'm not really sure, if anyone else had received this type of, any of these alcoholic zinc chloride, alcoholic formalins, or aqueous zinc formalin. I don't remember anything like this on the ASCP. So that's why I really don't have too much to say about it. It's just definitely good to know. But I don't remember any of these questions on ASCP. So, and if you guys are watching me and you haven't taken the ASCP, then once you do take it, if you just, remember that something like that was on there, you can definitely let me know. But I don't remember, the ASCP talking too much about zinc chlorides and stuff like that. So we can go ahead and skip to now the non-aqueous fixative. If water is not in the fixative, it is non-aqueous. So earlier we spoke about aqueous earlier. in the sessions on part 1 and 2. But now we are talking about non-aqueous. So the non-aqueous fixative ingredients are primarily acetone or either ethyl or methyl alcohol. These compounds are non-additive, coagulating fixatives. The non-aqueous fixatives are very flammable and must be stored in a fireproof cabinets. So, you know those fireproof cabinets, normally they're yellow. And that's where your alcohols are stored, your acetone. So that's why with the non-aqueous, just remember that they are non-aqueous, non-additive, and very flammable. So it says these reagents used only when the desired tissue components are destroyed or dissolved by the aqueous fixative because the reagents tend to overharden tissue drastically. First one's going to be acetone. Remember I told you all the A's. That's a great way to remember non-aqueous fixatives. And non-additive, so non, and then you could put in aqueous with the A, additive with the A, acetone, alcohols. So the first one is acetone. Acetone is a non-additive protein. So for acetone, you definitely put is non-additive, non-aqueous. So it's a non-additive protein coagulant historically used when the demonstration of enzymes, especially acid and alkaline phosphate, was indicated on tissue to be processed for paraffin embedding. It is also used as a fixative for brain tissue. When subsequent staining tissues for rabies diagnosis are needed, acetone is frequently used on frozen sections of tissue to be stained for cell surface antigens by immunohistochemical techniques. It is very rapid active fixative, but it causes extreme shrinkage, distortion, and overhardening. It is recommended only for preservation of special tissue components. So definitely put for your acetone, non-additive, is used for the demonstration of enzymes, also used for fixative for brain tissue when subsequent staining techniques for rabies diagnosis are needed. Acetone is frequently used in frozen sections as well. It's very rapid. It's a very rapid active fixative, and it causes shrinkage and overhardening. Next one is going to be alcohol. Your alcohols is both ethyl and methyl alcohols are used for fixation. Methyl alcohol is used frequently as a fixative for touch preparations and blood smears, and ethyl alcohol is used for preservation of water-soluble components. So automatically you want to do alcohol, non-aqueous, non-additive, good for blood smears. That's definitely like key. Alcohol is good for blood smears. Two of these water-soluble tissue components are glycogen and urate crystals. They are deposited in gout. Let's see here. Older literature specifies that absolute alcohol is required as a fixative for glycogen. However, much of the glycogen is trapped in tissue by formaldehyde fixation, so absolute alcohol is really used for this purpose. Alcohol is a non-additive protein precipitant that acts by breaking hydrogen and ionic bonds. That's the key thing you want to know. Ethyl alcohol preserves most pigments, dissolves fat, and overhardens and shrinks tissue. So whenever we get to pigments, minerals, and granules, I think that's the name of the chapter. It's pigments, minerals, and cytoplasmic granules. They're probably going to ask you, is alcohol a good fixative for it? So it says ethyl alcohol preserves most pigments, but it dissolves fats and overhardens and shrinks the tissue. Alcoholic formalin fixes tissue, begins dehydration, preserves glycogen very well, and penetrates quickly. When combined with formalin, the shrinkage effect of the alcohol is minimized. And then it tells you about ingestion of the methanol may result in blindness and death, and then flammable liquids. This is definitely what you want to know. The next one is carnoid solution. Okay, so it says carnoid solution. This is definitely going to be on the ASCP most likely like 90%. You got the absolute ethyl alcohol, which is going to shrink. You got chloroform, and then you got the glacial acetic acid, which will swell the tissue. So there go the two counter effects. Like one is doing one is doing the other. So you got, and Carnoy, remember about Carnoy, because Carnoy will be on your test. So the three for Carnoy, just know it's 3 ingredients. I'm just going to use the word ingredients for, for us, right? So 3 ingredients in Carnoy: alcohol, glacial acetic acid, and the way you can remember the next one is just think of chloroform. C for chloroform, C for Carnoy. So ethyl alcohol, glacial acetic acid, and chloroform. Those are the 3 ingredients in Carnoy. So it says erythrocytes are lysed by this fixative. So we know we cannot use Carnoy for red blood cells. It is sometimes used in cytology for this purpose. Carnoy solution is rapid acting, preserves glycogen, and exhibits good nuclear preservation, but causes excessive shrinkage and hardening. Fixation should not be prolonged beyond 4 hours. So another flashcard you can make, it says methacarn solution substitutes methyl alcohol for ethyl alcohol in Carnoy solution, and it hardens and shrinks tissue less than Carnoy fixative. So put that on your flashcard as well, methacarn. Let me put that in the notes for you guys. All right, so methacarn solution. It's a substitute. Methacarn solution substitutes methyl alcohol for ethyl alcohol in Carnoy solution. Okay, let's go ahead and go to Clark. So we got Carnoy, we got Clark. You could do something like, double C, so you can remember that Carnoy and Clark go together under the non-aqueous fixative. So for Clark solution, it's going to be 100% alcohol and glacial acetic acid. And it looks like this one is normally used in light microscopy. Let me just double check. This is the oldest fixative and is excellent for paraffin embedding. Clark fluid always get a high score for microanatomical preservation in comparison with other fixative used in light. Okay. So for Clark, I would definitely just think of, double C, Carnoy, and Clark. In Clark, there's only 2 ingredients: alcohol and glacial acetic acid. If that's on, I don't remember that being on the ASCP either, but it's just good to know. But Carnoy, you definitely want to know. That's important. Okay. And the next one is just your transport solutions. I'm gonna let you guys read that on your own. That's how solutions are normally, transferred over to the lab. You guys can read over that in Michael, or sometimes pronounced Michelle solution or Michael solution, buffered solution. Things are transported over to us in different, type of mediums, glue. So just read that on your own. You definitely, can read that. Once again, I don't remember that being on ASCP, but just for your knowledge, it's gonna, it could pop up, but that's not like a flash. I'm telling you guys, like, not to make a flashcard about it. Okay, so this next portion, which is crazy because I've been talking about pigments. And it's funny because I see removal of fixation pigments. I'm not going to read this either because I think you guys should have this covered it's many different ways to remember your pigments, but just from what I'm seeing, pigments, minerals, and cytoplasmic granules may be removed by treating deparaffinized and hydrated microscopic sections with one of the following solutions. So read that portion: removal of fixation pigments. And it tells you mercury pigment is removed as follows, and it tells you, how to remove it. So I thought that was really good that they had that in there. All right, so now we're making good timing because now we're going to go to troubleshooting. Okay, so for troubleshooting fixation problems, this is really, really important because you're going to have some pictures that's going to pop up on the ASCP. It may not be the best of quality, but you would need to definitely know what is incomplete fixation, delayed fixation, which is normally the same, delayed, incomplete, over fixation, italysis, and you need to definitely know what the pictures look like. So if you are in your book, there's a set of pictures on page 25 if you have the same edition as me, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 pictures that I would really want you guys to study. And so you can know what's the difference between delayed fixation and incomplete fixation. And how can you tell the difference? I do want you guys to know that with these pictures, like if they show you a picture on the SCP and the question is talking about, if you read a portion of the question and they're talking about in the H&E staining, and I'll get to a question actually in a few minutes, how sometimes the question can, trick you a little bit because you'll think the question may be about special stains, but really it's about the fixation. Or you may think, especially with fixation and microtomy, those two can definitely run together because you're thinking that you're talking about a microtomy issue. Once you look at just say incomplete fixation picture, you thinking like, oh, something with something with microtomy, but it would definitely have something to be with fixation. So I want you guys to study these pictures in your book when it comes to your troubleshooting fixation problems, because this is like major key on the ASCP. So the major problems encountered with fixation are because of delayed or incomplete fixation. So let's go ahead and talk about autolysis. Autolysis is caused by delayed fixation. H&E stain sections may show a loss or total disappearance of nuclear chromatin. Some cells may disappear, such as epithelial cells in intestinal specimens, or there may be a cell shrinkage with artifacts spaced around the cells. This artifact usually cannot be prevented on autopsy tissue. However, it can be prevented on surgical specimens. Now, for those who don't normally see a lot of autopsy blocks, you won't really, know microscopically what they look like. But if you're working in a lab to where you still, where you cut autopsy tissue and you're able to look at it underneath the scope, that's a great thing. So let's talk about how what the different pictures actually look like. So things to prevent autolysis, very, very important. Placing specimens in fixative solution as soon as possible, ensuring that the volume is 15 to 20 times of that tissue. So that will definitely be a question on the ASCP. The volume of the fixative. Most likely it will be formalin. So the volume that whenever that tissue is gross, it needs to be at least 15 to 20 times of that tissue. So whenever that tissue is inside of a cassette, or if the tissue is not inside a cassette and it's just, floating in the formalin, we need to make sure that it's enough formalin to cover the tissue. Number 2, opening uterus specimens upon receipt so that the fixative can immediately come in contact with the endometrium. So it tells us to look at the picture I-20 and I-21. So I-20 is delayed. That's delayed fixation, and that's a picture of a uterus. Um, I know, and you guys can let me know, but I know whenever I was studying for my histology exam, I was kind of nervous because I wasn't really sure if I should know what different pictures look like. Over time, once you start looking at more tissue underneath the microscope, you sort of, get the feeling of, what tissue looks like. For picture purposes, it's the easiest one for me definitely was the basement membrane, the kidney, and then a lot of like the intestine ones, and those were like the main ones that they normally put on here all the time. Of course, you'll have bone, you'll have for different chapters. Just try to remember those pictures in that chapter, not necessarily thinking you need to remember, what every single specimen looks like. But if we're in that chapter, try to remember at least what that control may look like underneath the microscope. That's just my opinion. So for I-20, that's a delayed fixation. What I'll do is I'll post these pictures on the community tab after the live, so you guys can go on the community tab and actually look at these, so you can know exactly what I'm speaking of. So this is number I-20. The endometrium shows the results of delayed fixation. You'll see like these three. I'll highlight the three parts of delayed fixation, but you'll see where it's very like scattered and things are missing inside of the three big sections. So it says uterine specimens should be opened as soon as possible and immersed in a large amount of fixative so the proper fixation of the endometrium will occur. So right here, it looks like the epithelium is missing. But if you go to I-21, that is correct fixation of the uterus. The endometrium in this section of uterus demonstrates proper fixation, contrast detail. So you can sort of tell when things look like something is missing on the tissue, but the top picture is delayed fixation, and the I-21, that is how the specimen should look once everything is stained. That means that is, correct. No, nothing was delayed. The next point is opening and pinning open. Opening and pinning open gastrointestinal tract specimens upon receipt so that fixative can immediately come into contact with mucosal surface. Once again, these are things that are done at the gross room, unless you guys, work, in gross room. But these are things that are pretty much done before it comes to the lab, in the formalin. So things can be fixed properly. So I-22 and I-23. So I-22, this is delayed fixation. A small section of small intestines that shows the effects of delayed fixation and incomplete fixation. Much of the surface epithelium is gone. There is no cell shrinkage. Gastrointestinal tract specimens should be opened as soon as possible, pinned out on a piece of cork covered with fixative, and allow an adequate amount of time for complete fixation to occur. So the things that I'm reading on the portion of the picture, that's just good for you to know. But as far as the actual picture, whenever that picture is shown, you should, if that question pops up, like, what is wrong with the picture? And I want you guys to understand that if the choices are talking about a fixation, like, chances are it's going to be, if you see any type of chromatin pattern or any type of epithelium missing, that is a fixation. Because they can trick you up and say, oh, the hematoxin wasn't filtered. And you're looking at it, and if you're new to these pictures, you're looking at it like, oh, well, maybe that's why, the purple looks like that. Or maybe, but you already know there's 3 shades of pink. So it's like, don't let them trick you up. Like, you have to know, like, if you see like the chromatin pattern or the epithelial missing, don't get delayed on, or don't get too concerned about the staining of it, because there's some pictures about staining in the actual staining portion, right? So at this point right here is going to be delayed fixation. So the next one is I-23. A section of small intestine that has been properly and completely fixed. For a well fixed section of small intestines for sections that shows total autolysis. So that I-23, very crisp chromatin patterns, like everything is there. So that's correct. That fixation wasn't delayed. And then the next one says slicing an organ resection, a spleen or kidney, breast or large tissue specimens into thin slices and placing a large volume of fixative. So for those who don't gross, so basically what happens is whenever you get a specimen and we have to actually like section them in thin slices, just like what you see whenever you're embedding. They have to be sectioned enough so where the formalin or where the fixative is can penetrate through the tissue so it can fix and it's not delayed or it's not, improper fixation, or it's actually it's complete fixation. So kidney, spleen, breast, or large tissue specimens, even brain, into thin slices and placing in a large volume of fixative. And the next one is bisecting lymph nodes if appropriate and placing in fixative. So I-24, 25, 26 in your book. So 24, 25. So the first one is delayed fixation. This is a complete cross-section of a small lymph node that shows incomplete fixation. So that's what that looks like. It's delayed. And then right underneath it is a lymph node, which you should have the germinal centers. So the section of portion of lymph node that is well fixed, the germinal centers are well preserved, and portions of several tuberculae. I probably said that wrong. And sinuses can also be seen. So just know the difference between what a delayed fixation looks like with that lymph node and then what it actually a correct fixation should look like. So those right there, that's autolysis. Now, incomplete fixation is something totally different. Not really, but it is. So because of the rapid turnaround time, specimens are not allowed enough time in the fixative solution to fix completely before beginning dehydration. The result may be separation of tissue components on the flotation bath during microtomy and poor tissue morphology. The nuclei may be smudgy with no chromatin pattern defined, or nuclear bubbling may be seen. Okay, so with your flashcards, definitely want you guys to understand. Autolysis. Delayed fixation. These are when the pictures are missing different, they're missing epithelium, they're missing, it's not crisp. Certain things are, you could tell that certain things are missing, right? Is things need to be fully submerged. Now, with your incomplete fixation pictures, you'll start to see where the chromatin pattern is not defined. Things look a little smudgy. Like just think of like there's water in it. It's not, but not really, because then that's a processing issue because they can trick you up too. So let's just think of like smudgy nuclei, nuclear bubbling, and we'll get into those pictures. So the first thing it says, increase the time allowed in fixation. Some problems may not be noted after even 24 hours of fixation and 10% neutral buffered formalin. Change to another fixative such as zinc formalin, which still requires several hours of fixation. Time for complete fixation. Gloxyl should also be considered because it is extremely rapid fixative. Place formalin alcohol in the first 3 stages of processing cycle. This will decrease fixation time and also begin dehydration. Ensure that the growth sections are thin enough for good reagent penetration and that the amount of fixative is 15 to 20 times of that tissue. Ensure that the formalin solution is not depleted because of overuse. Change their solutions frequently. Do not pack cassettes tightly in processing holders. These are all things that are actually, when you're about to actually process the tissue. Use agitation of cassettes in fixative holding solutions during or following grossing. Okay, so the final page in my book actually looks like, let's look at I-26 part of two germinal centers of lymph nodes are very well preserved in this section. So you'll see what a well preserved one look like. And then the results of incomplete fixation are apparent in the smudgy nuclei of this H&E stained sections of fallopian tube. Once again, I personally don't think you need to remember what a fallopian tube looks like at this moment, but let's just focus on the pictures of, if they show you this picture and this incomplete fixation, right? In incomplete fixation, the nuclei may be smudgy with no chromatin pattern. That's exactly what that looks like. That's smudgy nuclei. The other picture, I-28, incomplete fixation has led to nuclear bubbling. It literally looks like a bubble. It literally looks like, this is going to be crazy, but you guys know how I do my references. It looks like maybe like some swollen lips. Look, anything that's going to help you pass. Some swollen lips. It literally looks like a big bubble in the middle of your section. And the nuclei is smudgy. So if you get a picture like this, incomplete fixation has led to nuclear bubbling artifact in this section. It does not look sharp. It does not look crisp like I-26 picture does. You can see the difference between smudgy nuclei and crisp nuclei, right? So if you get a picture like this, and automatically if you see a big bubble that looks like a huge bubble in the middle of a picture, and you see like, oh my God, I can't make that out, and they start to ask you questions about it, the first thing you want to do is do not think about staining. Okay, I want to get you far away from staining. Don't think about the hemotoxin being filtered, because those questions will be asked. Don't think about anything. The only thing that I can say that may be close to where it can probably two answers you can choose from, just in case, because once we get into processing, with dehydration and stuff like that, that may look a little similar. But right at this moment, choose your fixative answers. Missing detail in tissue is delayed fixation, smudgy nuclei, or a water look. What I like to call a water look, that's incomplete fixation. Okay, that's your two key points for troubleshooting fixation problems. Okay, so that is it, you guys, for part 3 of fixation. You guys got any comments? Feel free to go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below. Let's go ahead and get into pop quiz question. Okay, so I decided to give you guys a problem solving question. All right, it's too long to type out. So if you want to answer the question in the comment section, you can, or to yourself. And, of course, I'll give you guys the answer. So one of the questions is, an H&E stain section fixed in formalin shows a brown microcrystalline deposit lying on top of the tissue. This can most likely be prevented in the future by filtering the hemotoxin solution before use, raising the pH of the formalin above 6, or washing the tissue after fixation. H&E stain sections fixed in formalin show a brown microcrystalline deposit lying on top of the tissue. This can most likely be prevented in the future by filtering the hemotoxin solution before use, raising the pH of greater than 6, washing the tissue after fixation. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the 3 possible answers, right? Let's do process of elimination. So the first thing, let's break this question down. The H&E stain sections fixed in formalin show a brown microcrystalline deposit. So right there, if I'm noticing a brown microcrystalline deposit, I'm thinking formalin pigment, right? I'm thinking some type of pigment. My first thing is probably going to be formalin pigment. So because it says H&E stain, and the first one I told you was filtering the hemotoxin solution, that is not it. Because I'm not saying you're not supposed to filter the hemotoxin, you do, but we're talking about the main thing is brown microcrystalline deposit lying on top of the tissue. So I'm going to go ahead and just eliminate filtering hemotoxin. Not saying that couldn't cause any type of artifact on the tissue, but in this case, I'm just gonna, if I was you taking the test, I would take that out. So my next two are raising the pH of the formalin and washing the tissue after fixation. So from my memory, I'm thinking, I know if the pH drops below, then I know I can get that brown deposit, right? And I know it can be prevented. And I know, you're supposed to wash the tissue after fixation. So I would definitely choose C, raising the pH, so that way, because it looks like it wasn't treated. Because if it was treated, I still wouldn't show the brown microcrystalline deposit if I removed the deposit, right? So I'm thinking I can raise the pH of the formalin. So let's see what the answer is. All right, so that was correct. The brown microcrystalline pigment is most likely formalin pigment, and it should not form if the solution pH is greater than 6. So I hope you guys got that question right. Good job, Elizabeth. And good job, Mimi, from earlier, if you're still here. That was the introductory pop quiz. That was a pop quiz from Fixation parts 1 and 2. So good job to both of you guys. If you guys are answering at home and you're listening, good job to you too. And if you didn't know the answer, this is a good way to study. Okay. All right. So you guys ready for number 2, the second question? Okay. So we're just going to piggyback off that question. H&E stained sections show a brown microcrystalline deposit lying on top of the tissue. It is especially heavy in bloody areas of the tissue. This pigment can most likely be removed by treating the tissue with running water, iodine and sodium thiosulfate, or alcoholic picric acid. So H&E stained sections show a brown microcrystalline deposit lying on top of the tissue. So we know it's a formalin pigment, just from the previous question before this one. It is especially heavy in bloody areas of tissue. This pigment can most likely be removed by treating the tissue with running water, iodine and sodium thiosulfate, or alcoholic picric acid. So if you know your pigments and how to remove them, let's go ahead and do a process of elimination. Okay, so running water. I'm just going to go ahead and remove that because I know running water cannot remove the microcrystalline deposit, the brown. It can't just be water alone. The next one I said is iodine and sodium thiosulfate. That is for a pigment, but we need to know which pigment that actually removes. And the next answer is, or possible answer is, the alcoholic picric acid. That is also for a pigment, but we need to know which one that one's for. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the answer. Let's see who got that right. So we know it's between the two, iodine and sodium thiosulfate and alcoholic picric acid. If you guys are ready. So let's see what the three pigments are again. So we know formalin can remove by saturated alcoholic picric acid and alkaline alcohol. Mercury can be removed by iodine followed by sodium thiosulfate. So it's formalin pigment, and we're going to remove it by alcoholic picric acid. Good job. Good job. All right, let's get another question for you guys. Okay, so this one's going to be a true or false question. So true or false, acetone is sometimes used when a rapid active fixative is needed. And we just got finished talking about all the A's. And I'm only doing this by memory, so non-additive is all your A's, your alcohols, your acetone. I remember Carnoy and I remember Clark. And I'm not even looking at my book. I'm just remembering because I literally just went over that with you guys. So I'm just trying to remember it myself because I won't just remember this because I know it. I'm actually, whenever I'm going over this study guide with you guys, it's like, oh, okay, that is ringing a bell to me too. I'm not just like, oh, I just know it. Like, I'm just trying to remember, like, if I was you, how could I remember it? How can I keep that in my head? So non-additive. Oh, remember non-aqueous? Those are my A's. A lot of A's, right? AAA, non-additive, non-aqueous. All my acetones. Ha, good one. That just came to me. Let me put this in the. So we're gonna call that the AAA group. So that's not aqueous, AQU. EOUS. I may be spelling this wrong. Okay, so I may spell this wrong. So, but you guys know what I mean. So non-aqueous. Let me spell it right. That's not right. AQUEOUS. Okay. So non-aqueous. We're gonna call this the AAAs. Just made this up with y'all. Non-aqueous, non-additive, and let me put the A, DDITIVE. I'm gonna put the A in a bold A or big A. So non-aqueous, non-additive, alcohols, and acetones. That's a flashcard for you guys. You want to make that into a flashcard. Okay, so true or false, acetone is sometimes used when a rapid active fixative is needed. True or false? So is acetone rapid active? Give you guys some time to answer that. True or false? Does acetone penetrate fixes fast or slow? All right, so the answer, good job. AAA, you guys put that down. AAA, non-aqueous, non-additive, alcohols, and acetones. That's going to be the AAA group. And within that AAA group, I just remember I know Carnoy and I know Clark. What's Superman? Clark Kent. Look, anything that's going to help you guys, just it sounds stupid, but I swear to you, like once that question pops up on your test, it's gonna like boom. Oh shit. Like I remember Shanika telling me that Clark Kent, like whatever that you know someone named Clark, I don't care. Just get it in your memory. Get it in your memory bank. Okay. I promise you it's gonna help you guys. Especially if these are new words and you never even, if this is your first time reading your book, studying for your test, I'm trying to tell you, you have to take a moment to just like make things relatable to you. That's how, if you're not a test person, if you're not someone who can just retain a lot of things, you have a busy life, if you just, whatever the case may be, any little thing that's going to help you just like for that to click, for you to pass your test. That's what I did. I know you guys. So I'm telling you guys, that's what I did. And I passed my test on the second go around because I thought I could just remember everything the first time and I couldn't. I just couldn't. So for that answer, acetone is used for rapid acting fixative if needed. I'm going to say it's true, and let's see what it is. It's true. Acetone is sometimes used for very rapid fixation. Good job for everyone who is answering. Good job. All right, guys, we're coming up on an hour, so I'm actually going to ask a few more questions, probably like one or two more questions, okay? And we are done. Let's see here. Any fixative containing mercuric salts will leave a pigment in the tissue. Any fixative containing mercuric salts will leave a pigment in the tissue. True or false? Any fixative containing mercuric salts will leave a pigment in the tissue. That goes again with your pigments. The answer is true. Mercuric salts will cause a fixation pigment in tissue. This cannot be prevented. So preventable, no. Removable, yes. Iodine followed by sodium thiosulfate. All right, and the final question. This should be fairly simple for you guys. The first and most important procedure in the preparation of a tissue for microscopic examination is the choice of, and the reason why I'm choosing this one because this is literally the end of fixation. And we're going to end it with this question because we're done with fixation after this question, you guys. The first and most important procedure in the preparation of a tissue for microscopic examination is the choice of fixative, dehydrating agent, or staining technique. The first and most important procedure in the preparation of a tissue for microscopic examination. So the first thing we do with the tissue, the first and most important procedure. Because if this procedure is either delayed or incomplete, then the rest of the following, embedding, processing, staining, none of that will even matter if the main thing is not done. And it is fixative. Good job, guys. So I think it is safe to say if you watch all three of my fixation videos or listen to all three of these fixation videos, you have a good basis of what to study in your fixation chapter, how I broke down fixation for you guys, what I did to remember fixation. It's not about reading everything verbatim. Let me rewind that. You do need to read everything verbatim. But once you read it, you need to go through the chapter and see what's the most important. And that's what I'm doing for you guys, because some of you really don't know what's really important when you have to read every single thing. But you do have to start by reading the whole chapter, whether you understand it or not. And then once you get to the chapter, you need to go back and break down what you think you need to study. And that's what I'm here for. Okay. And of course, everything that I'm teaching you guys or everything that I'm saying that was on my test and from what I can remember from what my professors told me, of course, those questions may not show up. But I think the overall rule is, at least if you can break things down and get a little bit more understanding of what each fixative does, what it contains, what is good, what is used for, that's the goal of it, not everything verbatim. And that's how the rest of the book is going to go as well. So I've added 2 older lives that I did last year. I've added that to this fixation playlist on my YouTube channel. You guys can check that out. So I've actually made a whole playlist for this. So whenever you are on my channel here on YouTube, just go to playlist and then you can hit fixation. It will be these 3 current lives, and there will be 2 lives from last year, which probably I spoke about the same thing in the last 2 lives, but it's just good to see exactly, I think I went into a little bit more detail this time in these last 3 lives. But I'm so proud of you guys. If you guys have made it through 3 parts of fixation, you now have you have the foundation of fixation, and it's up to you now to really go in there and just pick up where I left off, or if you feel comfortable saying, you know what, I got that part, now I know what I need to study in that part, and now focus on the questions. Because a key for me is you need to know Frida Carson, and I know you need to know the questions, but the goal is, you see how I broke down the book, and then I went to fixation questions, and then I corresponded the questions with whatever I was currently studying. Like, I didn't ask you guys a question about booing and we were talking about glue. So that's how my brain works. I didn't set you up for failure. Why ask you a question about Bowen? We didn't even get to Bowen yet. We didn't get to Healy. We didn't get to Zinker. We didn't get to, any of that. I was asking you questions based upon what we were currently studying. And if you do that, it takes a couple minutes just to skim through your question book. Be like, okay, wait a minute. I see something about formalin pigment. I see something about 10% formalin is the same as, or I see something about, putrefaction of tissues caused by, enzymatic activity, overfixation. Like, try to group your questions real quick with what you're currently studying, so that way you don't jump ahead and you don't confuse yourself. That's the goal. I'm trying to get you guys literally in my thoughts of how I actually studied for the ASCP. If you guys found this live helpful and you guys enjoy these type of study sessions with me, the lab girl, I know I need to stop putting 30 minutes because it looks like we go a little bit over, but promise you they'll probably get a little quicker as as time goes on. Fixation is just so lengthy, and I didn't want to rush things for you guys. So if you guys enjoy these type of study sessions with me, do not forget to thumbs up this video, please. You guys, thumbs up this video, share these lives with your classmates, with your professors, with your anyone who is taking the ASCP. Share these lives because they're very informative, and they would definitely help you guys out and any of the other students who may not know about my channel. And next week, I have a tech talk. So more information will be posted throughout the week, and I'll post it on my community tab. And tech talk will be next Sunday on October the 1st. And time will be announced within the week. And if you guys got any questions for my guests, once I drop who it is and exactly what they do, make sure you email me at thelabgirlcircle@gmail.com, or you can reach me on my other social media platform, which is Instagram at the Lab Girl Circle, and that's on my Instagram. Or you can leave me a comment here on my YouTube page, or a question that you would like for me to ask our guests. Or how about you just join me next week, which is next Sunday, October the 1st, for the live. You definitely don't want to miss it. Again, I really appreciate you guys joining the study session. After Tech Talk, we'll resume the next study session, and it will be, of course, processing, because that's next after fixation. So I really enjoyed this live with you guys. Do not forget to, of course, subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet, and comment, share, all those great things. And thank you for joining the gang. I really, really appreciate it. And I really, really thank you guys. Let's go ahead and get the views up. And I really appreciate you guys. And I will see you next week for Tech Talk. I'm super excited. Episode 5 is dropping. So definitely just be prepared, because this is going to be a great show. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next live or video. Bye.